Welcome to the Empower Her Wellness Podcast. I'm Morgan, and I'm thrilled to be your host and wellness coach as we navigate the path to a healthier, more confident you. As the owner of Get Fit With Me, I bring years of experience in personal training, nutrition, and coaching to each episode. Join me as we explore practical tips and strategies for fitness, nutrition, mindset, and more, all tailored for busy women just like you. Let's empower your wellness journey and achieve lasting transformation together. Hello, everyone. I am your host and coach, Morgan Ekovich, and today we're going to be talking about a topic that I find a lot of you struggle with. You may not struggle with it as often as you used to, but it's still something we get caught up in, and that is going to be the all or nothing mentality. This mindset is something that I see a lot with clients who feel like they have to be perfect in order to see progress, any progress. They feel like they have to be perfect at what they do. And when they feel like they have to be perfect, it often leads to frustration, burnout, or even giving up on themselves. And those are not things that we want. That's not things I encourage. So we want to make sure that we can notice when we're in an all or nothing mentality and figure out how we can get around it. So today we're going to talk about how you can break free from that all or nothing thinking and instead shift to a more balanced approach that leads to long-term success. So, a little bit more, maybe you're unfamiliar with the all or nothing mentality, but this mindset tells you that if you can't do something absolutely perfectly, then it's not even worth doing it at all. Maybe it's you miss one workout and you feel like you ruined your entire week. So, yeah, I might as well not even try the rest of the week. Or maybe it's you have breakfast that you weren't anticipating that's higher calorie, not very fueling, or a bad meal, as some people would say, and then you suddenly think, oh, the whole day's ruined. I might as well just pig out and just eat whatever is in sight and go all out. Does any of that sound familiar? I have been there at one point in my life. Don't get me wrong. The all or nothing mentality is so hard. And I have no idea where it started to come into our life because I don't ever remember that growing up as things being an all or nothing option. But at some point in the health and wellness journey, I started to take on this all or nothing mentality. And I noticed that it was actually halting my progress. It was making me more stressed. And when it halts my progress and it makes me more stressed, it makes me not want to work on myself. So that all or nothing mentality is something we are going to flip around and we're going to change it. And I want us to remember that none of us are 100% perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. We are human. We make mistakes. Life throws curveballs. So if we can focus on what we can control and get out of that all or nothing approach or mentality, I'm going to kind of use those interchangeably today. You're going to see success. You're going to see progress. You're going to feel better about yourself. You're going to be able to give yourself more grace. So, as we kind of move into, I want us to shift into a more balanced approach here. You know what the all or nothing mentality is. I've given you some examples. You should have a few ideas in your head of where this might show up in your life. So, as we move into embracing progress over perfection, one of the things that we need to do is shift our focus from perfection to progress. If you did not listen to episode 2 about the gap and the gain, go back after this episode and listen to that. We need to reframe the way we track and notice progress. And that book is phenomenal. It has changed my life, it's changed my client's life. So, make sure you go back to that. Instead of aiming for a perfect week every single week or even a perfect day, aim for a consistent one, a consistent week, a consistent day. Did you get all your workouts in 3 days this week instead of 5? A lot of times we overcommit. We give ourselves this big overzealous goal that if everything in the world goes right, we will hit it. But that is such a small percentage that actually happens. So we fail and we don't hit it. And then we feel like a failure. Whereas if I say, hey, let's make your minimum goal this week 3 workouts, max 5. If you get to 5, amazing. But 3, that's your minimum. That right there is you are still going to see progress. You are still going to feel great about yourself. Your body is still going to love you for moving it. It's okay if you don't get in that max number. Find that minimum. Give yourself that grace for when life is going to fall absolutely perfect. What does that week look like? But know that there's a very small percentage of life that looks like that. So we need to plan for that and give ourselves a smaller goal that is more realistic. Progress does not have to be big and flashy. It's about showing up and doing your best in that moment and then getting back on track the next day, the next meal, whatever that looks like, wherever you felt like you had slipped up. An analogy that I heard a long time ago, I forget who it was probably Mel Robbins. I follow a bunch of her stuff on Instagram. And she had said, if one day, and don't quote me if this is not her, but I just see so much of her stuff that makes me think it's her, that you may wake up one day and you may not feel 100% like yourself. You may wake up and feel like 60% of yourself. But if you go through that entire day giving your all to every single thing you do and giving it your best, even if your best is only 60, you're giving 100% of that 60% to yourself. And you're essentially giving 100%. You may wake up and only feel like 40%, but if you give it your best and you rock that full 40% all day long, you've given 100% of what you have that day. We're not going to feel like 100% every single day. We just don't. But if you can figure out where you are and show up and give your best and be honest with yourself, and just be consistent, right there is going to start to take you out of that all or nothing mentality and teach you that it's okay to not be okay and that you can still make progress and you can still do the things you want to do if you're not doing them 100% perfectly every single day. So now we're going to move into what some of you might have heard of and maybe you haven't, is the 80-20 rule. It is a great way to move away from the all or nothing mentality. And this means that 80% of the time you're sticking to your healthy habits. You're working out, you're eating balanced food, you're eating food that fuels your body, you're drinking water, you're getting good sleep, you're working on your stress management. You are 80% of the time you are doing all the things your body loves and it needs you to do and that you love to do. And the other 20%, that's for flexibility. That's for that dinner out with girlfriends where you know you've been watching your alcohol consumption, but you know you're going to go a little crazy. That is for missing that workout because you just are genuinely so tired and swamped and you just can't mentally do it or physically do it. Like that is what that 20% is for. It's 20% of grace, is how I like to kind of frame it. This approach gives you room to enjoy life while still staying committed to your goals. You are less likely to feel deprived or restricted, which means you're going to be more likely to stick to these goals long term. The 80-20 approach gives you room to enjoy the life you love without having to give up the things you love. So what this means, that's the whole motto of my business, is to help you create the lifestyle you love without having to give up the things you love, whether that's food, actions, activities, whatever it is. So when we think about 80-20, we want to think about I'm doing things that are going to make my body feel good. I'm being consistent at these, but I have 20% of flexibility, which means that nowhere in my life I'm going to be perfect. And we need to get over the concept that we are perfect and that things are going to go perfectly because as soon as we think they're going to go perfectly, life is going to throw a curveball and you're just going to get smacked on the side of the head and be like, "Oh, where was that coming from?" We need to just be fully aware that life is not perfect and perfect is just nothing that's going to happen. Let's talk about some practical tips for overcoming the all or nothing mentality. Number one, break goals into small actionable steps. You've heard me say micro habits. Falls into that is start with small goals. So if right now you have a goal of working out an hour a day, 7 days a week, it's a little unrealistic to start with, honestly. I see a lot of people fail with that. There's a very small percentage that will be successful. So what if we start with let's start 5 days a week for 30 minutes. And then if you're successful at that, we can amp it up. Maybe you realize after a week you're not even successful with that. Okay, we break it down into 3 days a week for 30 minutes. Or maybe we notice 5 days a week works, but you were only hitting 10 minutes instead of 30. Okay, Create that goal. When we break goals into small, actionable steps, it does take some trial and error because a lot of times we don't sit down with our calendar. We don't realistically think things out like we should. We just jump in and we just do it. And then we're like, well, why wasn't I successful? Well, that's because have you looked at your calendar? What time do you actually have to sit down and do a workout or to go to the gym and do a workout? So, in a perfect world, when you break your goals into small actionable steps, you need to be able to look at what your life currently looks like and say, well, my life looks like I have Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I have a 1 hour time slot, and 30 minutes of that I can dedicate to a workout. Awesome. That is the goal that you are creating for yourself. That is what you are breaking down, and that is what you're going to be consistent with is that right there. Because if we don't actually look at what our life looks like and we create a goal just willy nilly, we're not going to be successful. So break those goals into small, actionable steps after looking at what your life looks like and create those actions. Number two, focus on what you can control. Oh my goodness. There's so many times we get so focused on all the things in life that we can't control. We get frustrated, we get irritated, we get fed up. We let our mind and our life be controlled by all the things that we can't even control. So, number two is I want you to focus on what you can control. Some days are going to be busier than others, and that's okay. So, focus on what you can control on those days. If that means that you only have 10 minutes for a quick workout instead of that 30 that you had planned that you really thought you were going to have, that's okay. Focus on that 10 minutes that you actually have for yourself. Don't beat yourself up for the other 20. Maybe it's a meal. Maybe you really thought you were going to be able to have time to go home and make lunch, but instead you had to swing through the Subway drive-through and grab something. Like, that's okay. Acknowledge what you can control. And knowing that you're swinging through the Subway drive-through, what options can you choose there to still give your body what it needs with what you have available? Those little wins add up. They may not feel like we're doing things perfectly, which we never will, but they will still add up. Number three, instead of thinking I blew it, I might as well just give up. I want you to reframe your slip ups. And this is, I think, one of the most common things that happens is we tend to, oh, I had a bad meal. I'm just going to throw off the rest of the day. Or it's September or it's October. Oh, we're close to the end of the year. I'm not even going to worry about my goals anymore. We'll just wait till the new year. We tend to let our slip ups hold us back from making progress instead of using them as learning experiences where we should say, oh, I slipped up there. Huh. What can I do better? Oh, well, I can actually meal plan. If I meal plan and I prep and I make sure I take time to grocery shop, I can be successful. Use it as a learning experience. Create a plan out of your slip ups. It's not a bad thing. We all slip up in all areas of our life. But instead of letting it continuing to be a slip up, learn from it. Create a plan. Put something into action to actually make it be successful long term. Last little bit of today's. So now that we talked about practical tips to overcoming that all or nothing mentality, let's talk about actionable tips to implement that you can actually just start today. I've got three of them for you. Number one, which you've heard me say time after time, is pick just one habit that you are going to focus on. Stop trying to do it all. Pick one. Pick one. Jump into the show notes. Make sure you click on join our Facebook group, then jump into that Facebook group and post what that one habit you are going to be focusing on. And what I want you to do is I want you to commit to doing it at least 80% of the time. When you post in that group, you will get accountability from me. You will get accountability from others. But I want you to pick one habit that you're going to focus on this week, and I want you to commit to doing it 80% of the time. Just one habit. I know it's going to be tempting to do multiple. Just one. Tip number two, track your small wins. I mentioned the gap and the gain. I mentioned episode 2 earlier. I'm going to mention it again because it's so freaking powerful. Go back and listen, read the book, buy it on Amazon. Track your small wins. Maybe you didn't get your workout in a day, but you walked instead or you stretched before bed. Keep a journal or notes in your phone to remind yourself of the progress you are making. I have clients send me 3 wins at the end of their day every single day because it is so easy to get caught up on all the things that are not happening and all the progress we are not making. But if we start to acknowledge 1, 2, or 3 wins at the end of our day of the things that we did do, that progress will add up. Those small steps matter. And that takes us into tip number 3. When you slip up, be kind to yourself. Remember, it's about progress, not perfection. And every single small step adds up. It does. There's an analogy that I learned from one of the other coaches that I follow, and I'm pretty sure we talked about it on another episode, but it's that paper towel roll. You've got a paper towel roll, and each day you pull off just one sheet of paper towel. And after a week, that paper towel roll still looks about the same. But if you keep pulling one sheet off a day, that roll slowly gets smaller and you will start to see that progress. It is such a slow process, but it is totally worth it in the long run. So, to wrap up, remember that the all or nothing mentality only is going to hold you back. By embracing progress over perfection and allowing yourself some flexibility, 80-20 rule, we talked about it, you can stay consistent in making lasting changes. So, I want to challenge you this week. Pick one of those habits. I'm going to go back up to that tip. Pick one habit you're going to focus on for a week. Do it at 80%. If you can do it 100%, great. But 80% is the goal. Post it in the Facebook group to get the accountability. And then you will be amazed how much progress you can make when you allow yourself to be flexible. Don't forget to share your wins with me, whether it's on social media or in the comments, and let's celebrate your progress together. Thanks so much for tuning in. Next week, we'll be diving into how to create a morning routine that sets you up for success all day long. Thank you for listening to the Empower Her Wellness Podcast. I hope you feel more empowered and ready to tackle your wellness goals. If you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover, feel free to send me a message. Make sure to subscribe and leave a review to help us reach more women just like you. Until next time, take control of your wellness and keep empowering yourself every day.